Robert Plank Show, episode 387. Meet Edgar. Up your social media content marketing game, build a library of content, and enjoy automated evergreen traffic with Laura Roeder. Hey everyone, and thanks for listening. We're talking right now with Laura Roeder from MeetEdgar.com. So, how are things today, Laura?
I'm great. How are you, Robert?
Better than ever, super fantastic. And so, can you kind of tell us about Meet Edgar? Because like I've heard of people use it. I think I use something similar, but it always pays to be sure. So, can you tell us, like in your own words, what this whole Meet Edgar thing is?
Yeah, so Meet Edgar is a social media scheduling tool. So it's software that helps small businesses send their updates to Twitter and Facebook and LinkedIn. But what we do that's really different from other tools is focus on giving you a lot of your time back by repurposing your content and pulling that content for you. So, kind of the old way to do social media was to do every update manually on every network, go into Twitter and type in your update. And then the scheduling tools came along and it's like, okay, well, now I can put my update in this tool and it can go out to more than one network, but I still have to keep adding in new updates every day for the rest of time. So at Edgar, we've innovated on that. With Edgar, we store a library of your updates so that instead of you having to put new updates, the software Edgar can just go in and choose from your updates, send them out, and then you just have your social media handled every day. You have updates going out so that you can spend your time on social doing the fun stuff like chatting with people and connecting and sharing and retweeting and all that good stuff that's a lot more fun and easy to do.
Super awesome, and I'm all for having more fun and getting more done in less time and all that kind of stuff. And because I
Yes.
have to admit that when all the social media stuff came out, like using Twitter to promote your business or
Mm-hmm.
Facebook to promote your business, it always kind of felt like a waste of time on one hand because I was like, I'm going to spend all this time making these tweets just for someone to maybe heart it or maybe retweet it
Mm-hmm.
or maybe click. But I mean, with all this, posting on Twitter and Facebook, like those platforms, they want people to kind of stay on the platform. So it was always like I'm putting in even a few minutes a day posting stuff just to get a couple of clicks, and I didn't really see the result until, as you said, these kind of scheduling tools came along, and then I
Mm-hmm.
was like, oh, okay, so I can load up all my blog posts or all my YouTube videos or all these links and things that look interesting to me, and then that thing can be posting every 20 or 30 minutes, and then now I set it up once and now I get sort of the payoff over and over again. And then in addition to that, if I go in and interact with people and reply to people and that, now it feels more like it's more worthwhile in my time. So as far
Yeah.
as just like the scheduling thing, I mean, am I using it right? Am I missing anything? Any important stuff as far as like scheduling my tweets and all that?
I mean, broad strokes, it sounds like what you're doing is what we advise because what we tell people is that it doesn't add any value to your audience as far as how you set up the tweet, right? Sometimes people get really worried like I shouldn't use an automation tool, it's unauthentic. Well, your audience is seeing the end result, right? They don't know or care whether you typed it in on your phone, you typed it in your desktop, or you use this tool or you use that tool. It's all the same to them. They just see the end product. So you want to make sure that the quality is good and that it represents your brand. But as far as, the method that it used to get out in the world, that doesn't really matter. So use software for what software is good at to automate this stuff, to schedule this stuff out. And then you can spend your time doing what software cannot do, what only humans can do, which is really forming that relationship with your audience and whether it's connecting with influencers or customers or prospects. I mean, that's the social part of social media, and Meet Edgar really frees up your time to do that.
Super cool, and there's a bunch of good points in there, and like I definitely makes me think back to like when I use Twitter, scrolling through, I'll just kind of click on something if it looks interesting, but I've never once thought, oh well, they must have scheduled that. I guess I'm gonna
Right.
hold out until they actually post something from a human. Like if I see something interesting, I'm just gonna click on it, and a lot of times when I've scrolled through, I've seen people on Twitter that I've like known and followed for years, but then I might just see because they have it in the rotation something from even a couple of years ago that like I didn't know that they had out there just because in order to kind of get attention we have to be pumping out all kinds of content anyway, so it kind of brought to my attention something that wasn't too out of date but just something that I had missed. So I definitely from like a user standpoint, I've definitely seen the advantages of this kind of stuff. And so you mentioned that. So this tool, it's a scheduler, but then it also helps just sort of research more content marketing to put out. Is that right?
Yeah, so you can use RSS feeds to automate the content that comes in to Edgar, which is definitely one of my favorite ways to get Edgar loaded up. So you can add the feed of your own blog, but of course you can also add the feeds of other blogs in your industry that you like to share. And you can set it up however you want. You know, you can just add everything automatically, or if you don't think you want all the posts, you can go in and approve. But yeah, that makes it really easy to curate and find content to add to your social media feeds.
So when people set that up, so basically you're saying that we all have, if we have a blog, we have this thing called a feed, an RSS feed,
Mhm.
which is a list of, all of the things we posted. So if something new gets posted, the feed gets updated. It can go out on our social media. And so, I mean, and you said there's different sort of options for people. I mean, what do you recommend people get set up right out of the gate? Should they set up like their own blog so everything goes out automatically, or choose like their top three favorite blogs, or like what are some just initial steps people
Yeah.
should be taking when they get a Meet Edgar account?
So first of all, definitely set up your own blog. I mean, I like to just have your own blog just set on autopilot because that just makes Edgar so easy. You know that he's automatically finding all of your new blog posts, he's sending them out to your social networks. So to me, that's just kind of a no-brainer, right? Just set that one up on autopilot. And then what I like to do is choose, maybe five or so blogs that post a lot of content that I regularly like to share with my audience. Add those feeds to Edgar, but I like to set those up so that I'm checking in maybe once a week or once every 2 weeks, and approving the content I want to go out. Because sometimes with other blogs, they might post something that's, just like a straight up promotion, or if it's a software company, maybe it's an update on their software. Maybe it's something that you wouldn't really share. But that makes it really easy after you've added those five blogs, then you have a ton of content, and then you can just scan the headlines and click, click, click all the stuff you want to add to Edgar, and now you've filled your library with great content that your audience is going to want to see.
Super cool, and it's like you're probably going to check those feeds anyway, so why not kind of double dip there and get your information and also add it to your own feed. And so you say that, so you can add, say, like five or so of your favorite blogs, and then you see all the news items that come in that feed and come in and approve. And so what does approving do exactly? Like if I follow, like Gizmodo and TechCrunch and places like that, and I log in and I see, oh, well, there's like these 30 or so news articles, and maybe if I approve like half of them, what actually happens? Does that go out instantly? Is that added to a queue for later? Like, what does approving mean exactly?
Yeah, good question. So that means that it's added to your library of posts in Edgar that you want to send out. So something else that's unique about Edgar compared to maybe other social media tools that the listeners have used is we treat your social media as a library of content. So the old school way of doing social media was you send out a post and it disappears. Then you have to come up with another post and it disappears. You come up with another one, it disappears forever. And that just really doesn't make sense because if you look at your stats on the platforms that you're posting to, 5 to 10% of the people who follow you see any given update. So why would you write an update once for such a tiny percentage of your audience? It's really smart to send it out more just so that more people can see it, right? This is just the nature of these tools. You sign on to Twitter, you see what was posted during those 5 minutes that you're on, and then you leave, right? So if someone posts before or after, you're just not going to see it. So that's why at Edgar, we view your social media posts as a library that you've created and you put them into different categories. I mean, you don't have to. You can just throw everything in one category if you want to. But the categories people like to use are, for example, they'll put the post from their own blog in a category and then other people's posts in a different category. You have a category of promotions and calls to action saying, subscribe to my blog, read my book, sign up for my free ebook, buy my product, so that you're making sure to mix those into social media as well. And then you can choose that mix of your categories. So you say, okay, I want a post from my blog to go out every single day, maybe two from my blog. I want one from somebody else's blog. And then like 3 times a week, I want a straight up promotion and make sure I'm still driving people to my business. And so you put that mix on your calendar and then Edgar goes in and pulls from your library. So when you're adding, let's say, TechCrunch from the RSS feed and approving those posts, that means you're adding those posts to your Edgar library of evergreen content so that Edgar can just keep going in and finding content to pull.
Super cool. So sounds like a great way to have one of those sort of Twitter accounts that seems to be posting like, every 10 minutes or every hour or however often people should be doing it. And so you mentioned like, how it sounded like based on like, the things that you listed off there as far as what people should be adding to their libraries or their categories or tweeting out. It sounds like it should be like uh, a lot of like news items, a lot of other people's stuff, and then as far as like your own promotional, it sounds like that's only very occasionally. Is that sort of on the right track?
I mean, it doesn't have to be very occasionally. It's just that it's probably going to be less than other types of content. So, like, 3 times a week would actually be a really light schedule. And of course, that depends on how often you're posting. I mean, if you're posting something to Twitter every hour, then you're going to post your promotional stuff a lot more than just, 3 times over an entire week. But so that's going to depend on the frequency that you want to do. And with Meet Edgar, you can do anything you want. You can post one post a week. You can post an hour every day, or more frequent. Yeah, you can post every 10 minutes if you want. You have to have a lot of content for that. That's a goal to build up to over time. But yeah, I think it's important to think about your mix. And when we were building Edgar, that was a big part of how we designed the software because I found that what I would do with other tools is I really like to batch my time in creating updates. So I would think, okay, I want to do a call to action for my newsletter. So I'm going to write 10 different ones. Well, the problem is you write 10, you add them to your, older social media tool. Well, they would all go out 10 in a row, which is not what you want. You don't want just on Tuesday to have all the same tweets, right? I wanted to have that right mix over my week of how much I wanted to promote myself and how much I wanted to promote other people. But yeah, in general, sharing your own content is great. Sharing other people's content is great. And then a little less than that, you're doing those more direct promotions and calls to action.
Okay, cool. So with all this content, all this library, all these categories, do you have a recommended like oft I don't know what the term is, like oftenness or like
Mhm.
frequency, I guess, of like should people be looking to have one of these tweets going out every half an hour, every minute, every 10 minutes? Like, is there a sweet spot somewhere in there?
Well, it's interesting what you're saying because most people don't say things nearly that high. Most people are thinking like just a few times a day. So yeah, I would say most of our customers are posting like I don't know, around like 5 to 10 times a day, 5 to 7 times a day, for each social network. I mean, it's actually good to post. Most people get nervous that they can't post too much because they think they're going to be bothering people. But when you think about time zones, a lot of us have global businesses, right? We have customers in Asia and in Europe and Australia, in addition to the US. So a lot of people make the mistake of only sending social media updates in their own time zone. And, US, Australia are on opposite time zones. So you may be thinking that you tweet every day. People in Australia have never seen it once, you never send it out during your time zone. So you have to start with what you can manage, right? Because it can be overwhelming to come up with enough content to send out more frequently. So I think it's good to just start wherever you are. You might want to start smaller, and then as you build up a larger content library over time, you can start sending out updates more and maybe thinking about covering those other time zones as well.
Awesome, fair enough. So basically, tweet out a little bit, a few times a day if you have a small library, and then as your library grows, maybe ramp that up a little bit.
Because now you have, more content to share.
And so, do you recommend people like are looking to like fill a quota, or have you seen like have you seen people build their library at a certain pace? Like, should people be dedicating like 10 minutes a day or 10 minutes a week to this, or look to add like 10 or 20 things, or look to have a library of like 2,000? Like, I mean, what should people be like building as far as the size of their library?
Yeah, so the way I think of it is kind of doing the math on your frequency and thinking about how often you want to repeat. So if you have a block of 3 months worth of content, that means you will only be repeating your content 4 times a year, which is extremely little. You can be extremely confident that you are not going to be sending the same stuff to the same people. 1 month of content is also enough. People often feel like, oh, if I repeated the same stuff every month, that would be so much. That's because you see everything you send out, but no one else does. And this is why we often have a skewed view of this. So I see all the Facebook updates that I put out, right? Because I'm the one writing them, I'm the one sending them. So if I'm posting something every month, I remember that I posted it last month, right? That wasn't that long ago. So we'll think like, oh, it feels like we're posting the same stuff. Again, go into the tools, look at your stats, look at your reach. Nobody else is seeing everything you post. So I like to think, a month's worth of content is a great place to be. So that's why if you're posting more, that's going to be more content. If you're posting less, you need less content. And then maybe ultimate goal, building up to 3 months worth of content. I mean, most of our customers have a few hundred updates in their library, and that's plenty.
Okay, so just a few hundred then. Awesome. And
Yeah.
so and this is a really good reminder that you're mentioning here that, we see our own Facebook timeline, our own Twitter feed, and we
Mm,
assume that everyone sees our own. But I mean, even when we look at our friends' feeds, we're only seeing a small percentage just because things are so crowded in there. And so
right.
so you mentioned there about like, having enough content in there to sort of fill the time. And I'm using a scheduler right now, but I'm not using Edgar. And the reason why I use the scheduler that I use is because I could fill up a queue, and then once it reaches the end of the queue, it starts over. And so, does Edgar
Mhm.
have something like that, where like if I want to pile in like 400 of my podcast episodes, and I kind of like might shuffle, randomize it, and then by the time it gets to the end, it starts over? Is that a feature that you guys provide?
Well, yeah, so I now I'm like, I must have explained everything wrong, honestly, that you asked that because that's the only thing we do. Yeah, so all of your content is repeated. That's the idea of the library. I mean, you can choose things that aren't repeated if you want. You can choose things to only go out at a certain date and time. But yes, Edgar is pulling content from your library. So once you go through a category, that's exactly right. It just starts back at the top of the category and starts again. So Edgar never runs out of content.
Awesome. Good to know. I didn't know that till just now. And then, so the next thing that I'm sort of trying to figure out is, I as far as like posting on Facebook, I kind of post if I have a new piece of content, and if I see something interesting, I'll reshare it. But I have to admit, like, I'm not really automating the Facebook end of things as much as I should. And the reason for that is because, like, I don't know, it's easy for me to look at Twitter as kind of like, I don't want to say like a dump or like a spam kind of area, but Twitter's like very fast paced, right? Twitter, like, I'm fine, tweeting out a bunch of stuff, repeating a bunch of stuff. But then when I see some of these Facebook pages, that sometimes it's really obvious that they're automating the content, and I'm just kind of like a little more shy about posting so often on Facebook as I do on Twitter. So, do you have any insights on how to get around some of that stuff, on how to avoid kind of the nervousness of posting too much, and how to avoid making Facebook posts that kind of look too automated, or is that not even a problem?
Yeah, I mean, again, I think it's something that you sort of might overthink for your own business. I, you know, yeah, what does it mean to look automated, especially if you're just sharing like a link to your latest blog post? I mean, obviously there's like a style of posting on social media that's very much not automated when you're like, I'm sitting here on November 3rd, watching the leaves fall, contemplating my life. Like, there's like live updates, but then a lot of what small businesses share on social media is here's my latest podcast, here's my latest blog post. And those can be written in a very evergreen way. Again, like, it doesn't really matter if you're sitting there typing it live or you typed it into a tool that's sending it out, right? It's the same content that your audience receives. And I would just say look at the stats, look at your reach on Facebook. Like, this is kind of the way to combat what everyone's complaining about, which is the dropping reach. We can't change that dropping reach, so you have to work with it. And the way you work with it is to acknowledge that, 5-10% are seeing it. So you kind of need to send it again.
So, as far as looking at those stats and that reach, does Edgar provide any kind of tracking like that, or do you just recommend people
Mhm.
go into the analytics of the platforms themselves?
Yeah, it's nice to do both because the tools don't give, so we're a third party tool that's accessing Facebook and Twitter. They don't give third party tools all of their stats because they want you coming back to Facebook and coming back to Twitter. So we do show you stats about your performance, but there's even more you can see. when you go to facebook.com and twitter.com. So you don't need to do those deep dives every day, but I think it is good at, I don't know, once a quarter or so, go into your Facebook account and really do a deep dive. I mean, they show you some really incredible information about your audience demographics. A lot of people just don't even know what's in there.
Right. Every it seems like every time I go in there, I'm surprised by some new thing that they put in there. Like my
Hmm.
favorite thing was that Facebook will like I can have like a pixel on my website, and then Facebook will show me like based on the Facebook users that hit that pixel what other fan pages they like. So I might discover like new places to advertise even if they haven't even looked at my Facebook page, if they looked at my website, I'm like, oh, well,
Hmm.
based on people who visit my website, now I can kind of grow my fan page. And so like, there's all kinds of like, I don't know what you'd call like it kind of like feeds in on itself. And so I mean, great advice there. So look at the Edgar stats and then kind of compare to like the stats that Facebook or Twitter gives you. And so you mentioned there's things like demographics. Is there anything that when you look at your stats, is there anything that you are looking for, like the impressions or like that things are growing, or like what kind of things are you looking for when you look at these stats?
Yeah, I mean, I'm always interested to see what people share. I think that that share button on Facebook or that retweet button on Twitter really shows you what your most compelling content is. Because, I mean, that's what we want as content marketers, right? Even better than a click is a share. Because now they've chosen to share it with their network, and then someone in their network can choose to share it again, right? So that's one of the top things that I'm always interested in, which content is getting shares so that I can keep improving my content strategy to do more of that type of content.
Awesome. Makes it keeps it nice and simple, right? And instead of looking at all these crazy things, just like focus on the shares more than anything
Mhm.
else. And then, so Edgar can post to Twitter and Facebook and LinkedIn. Is that right? Are there any others?
Yeah, that's right. And we can also do the various things within those platforms. So with LinkedIn, we can do LinkedIn company pages. With Facebook, Facebook pages, profiles, and groups.
Okay, awesome. And so I have to admit, like, I feel like I get Twitter, I sort of get Facebook, but then LinkedIn, I mean, I feel like maybe I log into LinkedIn maybe once or maybe once every 1 or 2 months, and every time I feel like I'm slowly starting to get LinkedIn. But what do people need to know about LinkedIn as far as getting the most out of it and using your tool to kind of automate their marketing there?
Yeah, so a lot of our customers don't find that LinkedIn is a huge traffic source for them. I mean, not nearly as much as Twitter and Facebook, and that's what we see for our business. I mean, if that's the case for you, you're not a big user of it or you don't see much traction there, that's kind of why I like just having a tool just automate it and not have to worry about it. So that's how we look at LinkedIn. We don't get a lot of traffic from there, but we do get a little because Edgar is automatically posting all of our blog posts, posting all of our content, and LinkedIn is trying to be much more, oriented towards feeds and new things like that. So now when you look at the homepage or you look at someone's profile, if they are updating their LinkedIn, you will see those links. So people do come across it and people do click. So LinkedIn, I think for a business strategy is often used more in a sales capacity or like a one-on-one networking capacity. It's not usually, again, it depends on how you use it. It depends on are you leveraging groups, but the way we see most of our customers using it, it's not a huge traffic source for them, but it's like, well, might as well set it up because it's all totally automated and then it's just another traffic stream that's out there.
Right, it makes perfect sense. Might as well hit the button, and even if
Hmm.
it is not a huge traffic source, at least that's one more platform where you are, one more way for people to find you, one more
Right.
place to have that kind of presence and like look as legitimate as possible. And so great stuff. And so as far as people like using Edgar, are there any like do you see people like making a mistake or not taking advantage of certain features that are really important? Anything like that?
Yeah, I mean the biggest mistake is being too too shy about posting your stuff and too shy about your frequency. The thing we hear most is like, am I really am I really allowed to repost stuff? Aren't I going to bother people? What if they've seen it before? And if you think about what makes something like we all talk about going viral, right? And that's like the dream if you can go viral on the internet. Well, what going viral means is that it was linked lots of times, right? When something goes viral, you see it everywhere. All your friends are posting it. And maybe you see it a few times before you actually click on it, right? The fifth time you see it, you're like, all right, I've seen this article 5 times, it must be worth clicking on. So we all observe that behavior, but then with our own stuff, we get so nervous, like, oh, what if I post it and someone sees it who's already seen it? It's like, well, they're not going to come after you with pitchforks. That's kind of what we imagine, that our audience is going to be angry if we share something they've already seen. But of course, if you look in your own experience, I mean, you see things reshared all the time. That's kind of the nature of the internet. You're not mad about it. Maybe you ignore it. Maybe you've seen it before, but you didn't actually click. So, or maybe you clicked, but you didn't read. Maybe this time you actually read. Maybe you read it before and you liked it. So this time you share it, right? I mean, there's a lot of different things that can happen. So I would just encourage people to maybe push their comfort zone a little bit on resharing. And remember, people are opting in to follow you, right? If someone's following you on social media, they've chosen to be there. They want to hear from you. They want to hear your stuff. So don't be shy about linking to your stuff. Don't be shy about linking to your promotions. That's why they're there.
Awesome, great advice. Yeah, it can't hurt if you're just posting or every now and then, right? And I think that if I go and I look up someone interesting on Twitter, and if they haven't posted, all year, I'm not going to follow them. And then
Right.
sometimes I go and I clean up my list of who I'm following, and like I only follow like 100 or so people. And when I go and I look at who's gonna, who's not gonna make the cut, it's always if I click over and I go and see, and they haven't posted in months and months. And if only if some of these people had just kind of posted every now and then with one of these tools like yours, then I would have stayed a follower. And so everything that you're saying here makes perfect sense. I think that anyone would be crazy not to use social media. So use social media. If they do use social media, they'd be crazy to not be at least posting there regularly. And by having Meet Edgar, by having the scheduling tool, it sounds like that's the way to do it. And so is meetedgar.com, is that the place people should go to go and grab a membership to this thing?
Yep, meetedgar.com, and you can get a free trial of the software.
Awesome. And so who the heck is Edgar anyway?
So Edgar is the little octopus who manages your social media for you. We like to make it a little friendlier. It can be sort of a tedious, boring job to manage your social media. So Edgar helps to make it a little more fun.
Awesome. Just like Siri makes things fun and all that kind of fun stuff, right? Clippy and whoever else. So great stuff. And then so people should go to meetedgar.com to get that free trial. And can you kind of tell us about that free trial and like what kind of price points you guys have?
Yeah, so we have one plan for $49 a month, so you don't have to worry about figuring out what you need. We like to give the best version to every customer and every feature to every customer. So it's $49 a month that we give you 25 social media accounts. Most of our customers have four in there, but we give you 25 just so there's plenty. If you have a lot of Facebook groups or you're in a situation like that. And yeah, you can just pay month to month or get a discount if you want to pay yearly.
Super awesome. Keeping it nice and simple. No having to compare different plans. Just get the trial, get the $49 a month. It'll handle the number of social media accounts you probably have, and you'll be able to grow with that and use all those cool features. So, as we're kind of winding down here, are there any sort of really cool features that are just like there, but people aren't using, but they should?
Yeah, so one of our newer features is the ability to set an expiration date on your content. And this is something that came directly from our customers. So some people were saying, okay, I have a blog post and I want to make sure to put it in my rotation, but it's a topic that in about 6 months is not going to be so relevant anymore, right? Maybe they're posting about a Facebook algorithm change. So it'll be relevant for a few months, but then after that, it doesn't feel so relevant anymore. So what you can do with Edgar is if you want to, most of your posts probably won't have an expiration date, but for the ones that do, you can say, okay, I just want to go ahead and expire this content 6 months from now, and then Edgar will automatically go in 6 months and pull it from your library so that you're only repeating the content that you want to keep repeating in perpetuity.
Super cool. That sounds like an amazing feature, and that's definitely, as you were explaining that, a lot of different posts came to mind when maybe I posted about like a wrap up of like the year or like sort of a
Mm,
timely news item. And sometimes when I go and see, what I've posted on the tool that I use, I'm just like, oh, that post is from like 5 years ago, and like
yeah.
if people are going to click, they're going to think that this thing that happened 5 years ago just happened, and like, but then I don't care enough, or I don't have enough time to go and log in and go and clean that up. So I mean, having that expiration date sounds like a very like sort of must have thing for people who are loading up these queues, and so awesome. So you can expire the posts in your library. So I mean, lots of good stuff talked about today, not just as far as like the strategy of getting these libraries loaded up and finding stuff, but also just the importance of using one of these tools, because I think we all need to be kind of be posting on social media more than we are, and so why not use a tool to automate it, and why not use meetedgar.com in order to do that, because it sounds like you guys are kind of on the cutting edge of this stuff and
Mm.
adding in all kinds of features, so everyone needs to be using meetedgar.com to automate their social media posting. So I hope everyone goes there, grabs a free trial, gets a $49 a month plan. That way you can get all your time back and make use of all these new traffic sources that you're missing out on. So meetedgar.com is the place for people to go. And thanks so much, Laura, for sort of setting us straight as far as what we need to be doing for our social media. So thanks for stopping by and sharing some of that stuff.
Thank you, Robert.
Go right now to robertplank.com/iTunes to subscribe to the show, listen to other episodes, and rate and review the show.